You see what we doing? We back at it. A lot of studio. Detroit is different, but this time it's a whole nother twist on it. You see these? You think you know about collard greens? You think you know how to season them? You think you know how they supposed to taste? What's the best pot liquor? Also, the best soil to grow them. Is it east side? Is it west side? We about to put all of this to bed. Because guess what? August 17th, come on out to Detroit is Different Garden. 1634 Clement Street, Detroit, Michigan, 48238. And we got the annual Collard Green Cook-Off Competition, sponsored by Bill Institute. Right in the neighborhood, the Hope Village community. We talking Linwood, Davidson, Dexter, and definitely 12th Street. Come on out, August 17th, from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And remember, we got some blues for you too, because nothing goes better with collard greens than some down-home blues. The queen of blues, that is, Thornetta Davis, and also Luther Madman Keith. Check us out. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And as summer is here, y'all already know summer brings out a different form of creativity in and around Detroit. We got to capture it for a moment. And y'all know when we capture it for that moment, it's hot as ever and people complaining about that. People complaining when it's snow on the ground and all of that stuff. But we talking the arts, right? And artists function from Detroit, as far as I'm concerned, at a different clip than most, because we through the rain, through the snow, through the sleet, through the hail, like the mailman, delivering new ways to touch up and accent culture. And speaking of accent and culture, I got a brother that has ushered in so much of it, connecting to so many people. And definitely, when I say this, a critical, independent thinker, because his take on almost probably anything in life will give a different spin to how you look at things in life. And definitely, one of the homies, Eric Thomas, how are you today, my brother?
What up, though?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So how you feeling?
I'm all right, man. It's hot. It's a hot time.
it definitely is making sure you drink. You should be drinking water anyway, especially now that I'm getting older. But on days like this, that water intake is, it's real.
So dude on YouTube that always says stay hydrated. I feel that deeply this year.
Oh. I mean, definitely. And not like some, urban colloquialism about being thirsty, but more so making sure you drink that water like Tony Baker.
People definitely stay thirsty in Detroit. That's
a lot of
on every level.
You are definitely one of the people to speak to that. But let's get into some of your Detroit story, man. I always start here with these Detroit is Different interviews. You and your people, how did they make their ways to the D?
From what I know, my grandmother and her sisters came up in a single car with my granddad, who decided to come up to the city for work like black folks do, and they've been here since. My granddad owned Victory Cab Company and helped. He broke up a kind of a white cab monopoly. My family's been here for a long time. I mean, my grandma was born in 1929, and I think they came up here in maybe the 40s or 50s, something like that. And so I've been in Detroit my whole life, right? My mom and dad grew up here. I grew up here. My sisters grew up here. I've been here. I live here. I'm a Detroit person.
Whereabouts did your granddad come from?
My grandma and granddad both came from Alabama. My grandma grew up in a town in Alabama called Pineapple, Alabama, which is outside of Birmingham.
Okay, and there's a lot of Alabama roots in Detroit.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's basically just Alabama.
It's Alabama. I'm going to say Alabama, Georgia. That's why when I meet people with these interviews where they have family from Texas or North Carolina, it's that's unique. Even Mississippi. It ain't a lot of Mississippi folks.
I've heard people call Michigan Mississippi because of all the southern roots here. It's the South. Even when you go up north and you see all the Confederate flags, everybody's like, why are these Confederate flags in the north? It's because not only did the black people come, but the white folks came too. So, people came here.
Very much so. And then in reality, Detroit is its own thing.
Yeah.
And this Detroit area is its own thing. But really, when you travel Michigan, it's a lot of places, even certain places in Detroit, where if we took a picture of it and I showed it to you, you'd be like, where in Arkansas is that?
For sure. I mean, my favorite thing in Detroit is taking people to places they haven't been. I took one of my friends to University District, and he was just like, "Why? What is this area?" Sherwood Forest. This last week, I took one of my friends who grew up here, had been here his whole life, and he had never been over to the canals in Jefferson Chalmers. He didn't know. I offhandedly mentioned that there are canals in Detroit, like Venice, and there's just houses built. But the funniest thing about it is that in any other place in the world, those would be like $1 million properties. But this is like trap houses damn near with boats in their backyard off a canal, and it's incredible. Detroit's just an interesting place.
Definitely, definitely. In this journey, like you said, entrepreneurship from your grandfather, cab company. That seems like it. Cabs have always had an interesting relationship with municipalities.
Yeah.
But when you involve like unions, how work goes, how did your granddad navigate that? What game did he impart on you about stuff like that?
None. Strangely, so there was like a knowledge hole that happened. Like I became an entrepreneur. So my granddads on both sides, my dad's my mom's dad and my dad's dad, both were entrepreneurs. But I was raised by my grandma, and so by the time I got to my grandma, my granddad and she were separated. He had like a second family, as do these gentlemen from the past have. And so I was raised by like a woman who was mostly a housemaker, and she worked in a factory for a long time. And so I stumbled into entrepreneurship completely separately from all of the entrepreneurial lineage in my family. And so it was strange because you would think that some of these folks in the family would have passed some game down, but I think that's like a what they call a generational curse. We just don't pass things down. So I'm building back up from scratch damn near, other than the support I've gotten from my aunts and uncles who just made sure I was dressed and ate.
Yeah, and definitely clothing goes in par on so many things, and I want to get to that. So, I guess along that same journey, neighborhood. What neighborhood?
Joy Road in Greenfield. I think it's called the We Care neighborhood nowadays.
I don't know what they call that, but I call that the Cody neighborhood, the Rouge neighborhood.
Yeah.
Exit 9 is
Exit 9, Murder Mac.
Affectionately, KDZ put for the world,
Yeah.
And it's so weird because on the new Killer Mike album, it's an Exit 9 song about his neighborhood, but
A lot of Exit 9s.
exactly.
We now know everything that's Exit 9 is the trenches. It's like a Martin Luther King Boulevard in every neighborhood.
But when you think Exit 9, I definitely am thinking about that neighborhood. And also like the Street Lords over there, that community alone is such a dynamic because it's the equestrian farms. It is the farming now with D-Town Farms and so much of the work there. It's Rouge Park. It's still, like I think of like the original starters. Like that community.
The original starters is over there for sure.
Is and let me tell you this, like the original starters experience is so much different than the the franchise starters.
Way different.
Experience.
It's a whole different place. It's a whole different restaurant almost.
It's like, exactly. So what was it like? What was that neighborhood like when you were coming up? And then also some mega churches over there. Now the mosque is over there. Like, what's...
growing up, so I was raised by my grandma, and when I grew up, there were a lot of kids on the street, so I was out playing, and we were having a good time. There's way less kids over there now. But it was still, the beauty of youth is you don't notice how wild it is, right? Like my grandma was stuck up by like a 12-year-old once. I've had friends killed in the grass in front of my house and all that kind of stuff. And so but at the same time, most of my stories aren't tragic, and I think people get really hung up on those things. Most of my childhood was me playing with my friends and playing basketball in the street and, playing football. I remember playing football and, running backwards and slamming into a car or just getting in fights, with the kids that lived on the street. And then the next day we, eating ice cream and stuff. I walked to school every day, right? So I went to school. I grew up on Joy and Lauder. I went to school on Joy and Coyle. So I would just walk down the street. I had been walking since first grade. And it was just a community of families, right? In the midst of what I guess was a crime-ridden area. I remember one time I was going to get my insurance from my car, and you do the drop downs. I was like, oh, Detroit. And it was like, what neighborhood? This neighborhood. And I remember it specifically asked me if I lived at this intersection, this Joy Road and
Wow.
Greenville intersection for the insurance. I was
Wow.
like, I just closed the tab. I was like, whatever that's gonna be, I can't afford it. Like, but most of my childhood memories are fond. Like they're all mostly positive. Right? It's just you a kid, man. You have a good time.
And also, I think what makes that community also a little bit like adds its own flavor and difference is the being so adjacent to Redford and then Dearborn too. So like you also have it's a lot of Africans that stay in that
Yeah.
community. So like Nigerians, Kenyans, there are definitely some Palestinians, some
A lot of Indian folks, mysteriously. I
Indian-
got a lot of
yes.
Indian friends who grew up over there. Some Chaldean folks and Arab folks who were just like were on the Detroit side.
Yep.
It's the whole thing. It's
Yep.
like a little baby Hamtramck over there.
It is definitely
As you get
like
closer.
that. Yes, and then the just even like the layout of like some of the housing stock in that community is you could tell like okay, some of it is more traditional like this neighborhood of what we've seen in Detroit, but some of the houses or the ranch styles even have like a different feel and look. So that's one of those communities where or at least how I know it. It's not like over here where it's like every house has like 2 or 3 bedrooms or something. Like it could be like a house with like 6 bedrooms next to a house with 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, we had a bunch of those. I had a small house. We had 2 bedrooms in the basement, and then the house across the street had 2 stories and 4 or 5 bedrooms. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think adds a different level of like some ownership for the people that got to that community because that was one of those communities that as like the footprint was expanding, it's like, no, like some of the original people that bought those homes, meaning like the home was built, original purchaser stayed in the family for generations.
Yeah, there was a white couple they were like the last white couple on the block, and they had been there through the whole time. I think that like they didn't leave the house till they died. It was like then first the husband died and then the wife passed on, but they were there. They were nice. They walked to the store every day. I mean, we kind of looked out for them. I mean, they had been there so long that even as kids, they were like, okay,
we watch it. Yeah.
We got you.
So along this high school and your journey as you grow.
So I went to Henry Ford Academy, which is inside Greenfield Village. It's a charter school. My grandma. So I took that test, that entrance test, and I got into like all the schools. Right, I got into the Renaissance and Cass and all that stuff. And my grandma signed me up for this lottery, to go to this school inside this museum. And so I was looking at Cass, but I have family members who are drug addicts, and so it was too close to Cass Corridor for my comfort. All of my relationships with Cass and Cass Corridor in that area were finding a family member or looking for someone over there. And so I just had too much trauma around it. So I picked the museum school, and it was a really unique experience. The 9th grade was in the museum proper, and we had they called it the fishbowl because all the classrooms were glass. And so museum spectators would come and look in the classroom. They thought we were like an exhibit. And then, which there's some racial ramifications for people to view black folks in the fishbowl as an exhibit. But then in the 10th, 11th, 12th grade, we were in the village. And so my 10th and 11th grade was in we're in 2 encasings that used to be giant carousels. And then my 12th grade was inside train cars. They were literally train cars on the track, and we would just go from class to class on this platform. And then so we had a history lesson. We could just walk out into the village and go into Thomas Edison's house. It was a really interesting high school experience that I basically failed out of. I graduated with a 1.8 GPA because I just didn't do my homework. I wasn't interested. I had high test scores. I just didn't want to do my homework.
All right, now let's talk. You're the second person that told me about the school, and like I often tell people, that museum. Okay, that archive of the museum of what is shared from Henry Ford's collection
Yeah.
has so many just monumental pieces in world history,
They got some bangers in there.
let alone American history.
Yeah, man.
And I often even have this talk about, like, so many people, because I went to Northwestern just down the street, it's Motown, like we just don't go.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
like we're like walking past it. Like people have lived here and never even knew about Greenfield Village, and there's people that travel the world to come to visit and see. Like if you're a person interested in cars and the history of cars, and you like old schools, instead of going to Rick Ross or DJ Envy's car show thing, go to Greenfield Village. Like
Yeah,
you
or
will.
locomotives or aeronautics, Aerospace. Like I think the Wright brothers plane is in
Yes,
there, bro.
it is.
There is an actual physical. There are slave houses that the real slave houses are in the village that you can go in and see what that life was like. You got Thomas Edison's like workshop that you can go in and see where he like invented the light bulb. Like that shit is inside the village. It's insane.
Definitely.
That's weird.
And like even the drafting, like speaking of Thomas Edison, all my pro black people gonna be, that's Lewis Latimer. It's like
It
some
absolutely-
of the draftings from him, and like when he say lab shop, that's just how in a lot of ways these inventors are kind of like production houses. It's like the
Yep.
ghost inventing. But still, like a lot of that same relationship, as we know, George Washington Carver's works, a little bit of that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's a lot in there, and I, as you said, the village. I've only been to the museum. I never really went through the full.
You have to go
village
into the village. It is mind blowing because there are buildings in it, right? When you're in the museum, there are trains.
Yes.
Full trains and wells and like the first assemblies and all this kind of stuff. But in the village, it's a village, right? Like there are full buildings that like Henry Ford like lifted from their original locations and placed into this physical location together. It's like you're like walking through time. It's interesting. I went to high school there, and I had no appreciation for it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We had kids who were like having sex at exhibits. Like they were like destroying,
it's
kids.
It's like the world's first. I think the coolest exhibit about the museum is they had
I don't know if we're supposed to tell people
projected.
that.
Well, kids getting in.
Listen, I graduated in 2005. You can't.
Kids getting in. Human beings getting in, especially Americans. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like I'm pretty sure. You know what I'm saying? If they do another submarine excursion, it'll be like, wow, the OnlyFans submarine excursion.
It wasn't me. I was a good kid in school,
So-
except for I didn't do my homework.
But they have that one bubble home that they thought what homes would look like
Oh,
in
yeah.
2024.
Home
which
of the
is-
future.
Yes, home of the future. Like you see some of the ideas of appliances and how things would come.
It's called it starts with a D. It's not Dynamo Home, but it's something like that. It's
Yeah,
like
something. Yeah.
some dramatic name.
It definitely is like if you watch the Jetsons, and if you're younger, okay, it was a cartoon called the Jetsons, thinking about basically what right now would look like. And in a lot of ways, it is not the Jetsons.
No, we didn't make it.
No, not yet. So into that same space, I guess after high school, because definitely one of the brightest, definitely the tools to do so much. Where were you at after high school? What did you want to do? What choice did you make on the pivot?
So I wanted to go into robotics when I was younger. In fact, I was a member of the first robotics team at Henry Ford Academy. And I wanted to go into robotics since I was like 12. Like that was my thing. I was in DabSap. I loved tech. But when I was on the robotics team, I ended up on the design side. So I helped design the robot and all that kind of stuff. And that I fell in love with the craft of making things appealing, like visually appealing, making people fall in love with stuff. So when I went to Henry Ford Academy because once again I graduated with a 1.8, so I wasn't going to MIT, and I didn't really. I became disillusioned with college because nobody could give me like a good reason to go, and I don't really do things if I don't have a good reason. Because the reason go to school to get a degree was not a reason for me. Right, I didn't care. I don't care about the validation for that, and I didn't care about getting a job. So I went to Henry Ford Community College, and I pivoted to graphic design because I had been doing graphics in high school and I had been doing graphics like on the side, like for fun. Had an internship at Wayne County Community College while I was going to Henry Community College.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, right. Weird times. And my grandma would drive me all the way out there, and I got like poached by this like entrepreneurship program where they were like, "Hey, you can do a thing. You're the right age, even though you're not a student here. You should be an entrepreneur.
Sign up."
Like, you wear suits every day, because I've been wearing suits every day since 2005. So 2006, 2007, they were like, you can go to a networking event. You seem presentable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up starting down the path of entrepreneurship reluctantly and by mistake. And I still am on that side, a path that I didn't really choose. I just kind of stumbled into it. A lot of my current life right now is me reassessing the things that I want to do versus the things that I kind of stumbled into, just by being alive. I have a lot of skills. I learned a lot of things. And so, when you have a skill, people tell you, well, you got to make some money with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I was doing. But it's like, just because I can do it doesn't mean I want to sell it.
That's interesting. And you put up a post on that, maybe it was like last year or something, and then I gave a comment about that. And it's interesting as we get into that. But that is interesting that you tap in that style. And Henry Ford, that's something else we share. I went to Henry Ford as well. I started at HFCC, then over to Walsh and kept through Walsh. But I want to talk a little bit about what you took from your Henry Ford experience, as that place has changed a lot. Even since when I went. So I'm imagining when you were there.
That was Henry Ford College, right?
Yeah, it's Henry Ford College. It's like, but what I did, I learned so much about Arab culture when I went there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because you were in their house.
Yeah.
We were in their neighborhood.
What was your Henry Ford experience like, just like culturally and just that difference and what happened? And then I did take some, as people know, I've been graphic designing for a long time, but I did take the full suite of a lot of the electives in Premiere and Photoshop and a lot of stuff. And actually the creative classes I took at Henry Ford were pretty good. Like, in the grand scheme of like some of the other more, I guess, quote unquote, prestigious trainings, it was pretty good for me. But what was your experience like there?
I feel like I mostly BS my way through Henry Ford. I mean, at the time I was just done with school. Like, I was only there because my grandma was sad that I didn't.
You got to go
school.
somewhere. Mm-hmm.
And my dad was all emotional about it, which I was like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
I spent most of my time in the cafeteria. I did join the newspaper, and so I did the design for the newspaper, and we won a bunch of awards when I took over design for the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was that like? As shout out Dawood Muhammad, as he said, sometimes like being applauded for some of the work you do can be a boost to continue to do that work, and then understand that you're on the right path. What was it like seeing your other people appreciate your work and it being celebrated?
It's cool. I mean, a lot of, and I'm obviously doing a bad job of it, but a lot of my life has been kind of just like existing, right? And I think that speaks to where I am at now, where I want to do more intentional living than just kind of existing. I've always wanted a lot, but I've never known exactly how I wanted to get there. And so I just kind of moved from thing to thing, right? I spent most of my time in college in the cafeteria because that's where my friends were. And I had started my business at the time, so I was mostly just doing projects, right? I had this big, giant, anybody who knows me from the past knows I had this big giant laptop thing that flipped out and thing. And so that's what I was doing. I was just sitting there working on projects and talking to friends and talking about anime, you know what I'm saying? And then eventually I just moved on and, started running my business more full time and making horrible mistakes because entrepreneurship wasn't my passion or my interest. But it snowballed up into a career. But yeah, it's interesting when I think about how I got here because it feels like I stumbled up into a career, right? I think people feel like, I think the misconception about me is that my identity is a lot more intentional than it actually is. Mm-hmm. What I am is I'm consistent, but it wasn't because I wanted people to feel a certain way about me is that it makes me comfortable to be consistent, right? I wear suits every day, not so that y'all know I'm the guy with the suits every day. I wear suits every day because I like suits. You know, I have a ponytail not because that is a defining characteristic that will allow people to know who I am, but I wanted a ponytail like this since I was, maybe 14. I have circle glasses and Cartiers on because I've wanted circle Cartiers since I was 14, 15 years old. I didn't even know what they were. I've always seen like the open C, and I thought those were cool. I had like little cheap knockoffs. When I had sunglasses, I didn't know what the brand was. I just thought they were cool. And so I have tried to live for myself, and that was consistent. And so there's not much about me different than I was at Henry Ford, other than the fact that I'm more refined. My suits are tailored. My understanding of self is honed. My ability to communicate, my needs are sharpened, and my view of the world has evolved because I'm an adult. But one time my dad told me the one thing that's been interesting about me to him is that he feels like I came out fully formed, right? I've been this person since I was like 3.
Well, you definitely, even when we first met, I don't even know if you remember, but this was years ago.
A long time ago.
You're an independent thinker, and I think people say this like because Kanye West has put it in the
The QAnon folks and Kanye.
in the I guess the pop cultural sphere of free thinking and what that free thinking means, but so people can understand when I say an independent thinker, meaning that obviously we're taking information in that is presented from books, film, audio, conversations, oral histories, deductive reasoning, but it's still applying more critical thought on top of information that's given to us. So, like, for instance, independent thought, if a person says, it's going to be storming tomorrow, so make sure you don't go outside. Independent thinking is going to go into like so many other prompts of like, when is it going to rain? How hard is it going to rain? Are there ways that we can mitigate how the rain will impact us? If this were to happen, what ways can I rearrange the other things I have to do? Like, it's so many more questions that are just popping up. And I know a lot of people may be thinking, I think like that too. But to think like that for almost everything that comes your way, a lot of times I think most people are usually, do I want to say falling in line, but they're more in the space of, like, this is the system. If the system is created the right way, and I'm in marketing, so I'm telling you this, like, it's social engineering. It's ways to present information where you socially engineer a behavior and a response that most people will have. And this stuff is even tested in focus groups and stuff. But then you get a couple people in there that'll be like, this person is not going to go for the social engineering that clearly sets things up. You're walking through Cedar Point and you see the sign that it says it takes 3 hours to wait in this line to get to to get to the front. Now, technically, if nobody has an understanding of the social culturation and the customs of everything, it could be the type of person to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna just keep hopping these turnbuckles and just go to the front of the line because I feel like it. Which is good that people don't do that, and I don't do that either. But that is an option. And that's where I'm saying there are so many more options of choices to make. And oftentimes the social engineering, I think, positions people to respond in certain ways.
I think people have conflated independent thought with being a contrarian.
Yeah.
And it is as intellectually lazy to disagree with everything as it is to agree with everything.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you do the math and the answer is the majority vote, that's fine. And I think that is what is messing people up nowadays. They think that if everybody is going that way must be wrong. bro, sometimes the water is over there. That is why everybody is over there, right? And that the Kanyes and these type of folks are really annoying me with that because there's all these people who have never done a damn thing in their life who are like me and Kanye. Bro, you are not Kanye. Kanye is very successful, and he's not always right. There's also this idea of blanket genius that frustrates me, right? Well, if Kanye was good at music, he's good at shoes, maybe he's good at politics. Nah, fam, these are not the same skills, right? Knowing infrastructure, the people who think that Kanye alone could have the distribution engine of Adidas are out of their mind. Adidas is a logistical juggernaut, right? They're managing inventory and SKUs, all this other kind of stuff. Kanye needs Adidas, Adidas needed Kanye, right? They have different skill sets in that space. And that is what frustrates me about like a lot of the independent thinker conversation because they don't mean independent thinker. They mean contrarian.
And I like that you just put that, you crystallized it, and I do agree with that. Like, and then sometimes even with it, like, you know what that old adage of heavy is the crown. So
Right.
then comes questions about capacity.
Right.
Could certain services be delivered better? I think a lot of things could be done better.
For sure.
But now we get back into more of that social engineering of we're assimilated as people to function in certain ways.
Right.
You know, so like the delivery system of what we're conditioned as will have impact on how we're going to engage in the world and usually expedites how things function. So, for instance, like let's just get into, like you say, with Adidas and the logistical systems. I mean, I would imagine the logistics of airplane delivery to shipping warehouses to trucks with different sizes to get to different stores
Right.
to that being sold. These are relationships that probably may have been established. I mean, Adidas goes back to like Germany, pre-Nazi Germany.
You're right.
So like some of these relationships have been established since World War II.
Right.
So the knowing and the shipping and fulfillment, and now I'm about to get into some accounting for you guys, like net 30, first in, first out, how you set up pallets to be delivered. Like all of this is not it. These aren't things that I think Kanye wants to get into
At all.
And furthermore, if Adidas, if the CEO from Adidas said, "Yo, you know, I've been working on some tracks, man. I was thinking I can get in the studio with
Not
you."
trying to hear it.
And you know what I'm saying? I hear Jay-Z on this. You know what I'm saying? I think we could do a whole Watch the Throne too. Kanye will look at him like, you're crazy.
You got to stop doing drugs. That's what it is.
Exactly. So it's like we, as you say, like we all play different roles in working with each other for skill sets, talents, opportunity, and interests to align.
Right.
So it's interesting that you bring up like, okay, in existence and then purpose, because you're speaking about it, because you do have a lot of, you already know, you have very talented, very thoughtful and intentional with that, but purposeful. So as you're looking at iterations of where you move next, what do you think before has not left you as intentional as you feel? And I'm just taking that interpretation from what you're sharing.
I just, lethargy consumes me, right? I got a lot of like, whatever happens kind of energy, right? Anything that's not what I want isn't of value to me. And it's been like that for a very long time, since I was a small child, which is dangerous, right? Because if, like, the same reason I don't have a car, right? I want a Rolls Royce, so I don't have a car. Mm-hmm. Because I always joke, if I have a Toyota and my Toyota breaks down, I'm going to drive it into the river. Because I refuse to be inconvenienced by something I didn't want in the first place. You know what I'm saying? And so if I'm not living where I want or doing the things I'd like to be doing or connecting with the people I want to be connected to, it's a wash. It's not a big, it's whatever to me.
I like that you said that. And that energy is a very, as far as I'm concerned, a very artistic energy. Like, artists need to be passionate about what they're committed to.
Exactly.
So I guess the question that I have for you there then becomes, and this is me more from a business mind state and more of a conditioned, I guess definitely American mind state of, we sometimes have to do what we don't want to do to get to a point to live the way we would like to live. That's an adage.
That's what they keep telling me.
So with that, is there right now I'm not speaking in any absolutes. I'm always looking at things on a variable. So like from 0 to 100% with a statement like that, is there any validity? Like, is it, do you think that has like 10% validity, 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60? What would your take be?
I think it depends on which part of these things that you're talking about, right? Like, you definitely, like, if you want to develop a skill set, right? Graphic design, music is new for me, photography, video, film, blah, blah, blah. You have to go through the rigor of developing the calluses to get good at the skill. I mean, that is just the bag, right? But I don't like working with people I don't trust, right? And so if I'm in a situation where I'm working with people I don't trust, or I'm in a situation where I'm not able to execute on my word in the way that I would like to, I'm going to release that thing. And so for me, the work is never the problem, but when it starts coming to principles or somebody is using my identity to get over, right? Which is a thing. When you build a brand, people will try to stand on your brand as a point of value. It's like a trust shortcut. They find the person that people already trust, and they say, okay, they already trust you, so now we don't have to build the trust. That's what influencer marketing is. We don't have to build trust. They build trust. We'll buy that trust and we'll slipstream it, right? Usually, if I feel that is happening, I step out of the way. I have no problem with release. People see recently I left my city job. It's a good job. It's a fun job. It's a fantastic job. I worked with incredible people. I did work that I'm really proud of. But as I did a assessment of my life and the place I want to be in my life and the things I want to do, and I started to do the math on how much time I have to do X or contribute to Y. And I realized that this part was taking up too much of that space, so I couldn't go and do this other thing that I felt compelled to do. I had to step away from it. It's a stupid idea to leave a good paying job that there's no problems with. Like, people didn't want me to leave. I was doing a good job, you know? But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to make a decision for yourself. And for me, I need to be able to know that I'm making a decision, especially at this point in my life where I do plan on making a transition to the Eric that I see in my head.
Okay. So much to unpack there that you just gave. You gave some good game. So in that, you said working with people you trust. And you also talked about, I'm surmising like the alignment, but you spoke to something that I speak about now so much that people almost like say, oh, that's what Kari's talking about, social capital. And I feel that social capital and creativities are like anchors of what we carry as Black people in our society. And it speeds things forward on both levels, meaning that if I call you and I say, hey, Eric, this is somebody that you really got to meet. I think that you all would fit and align and connect. Me providing that introduction, it's a quantifiable value in that with the social capital based on the relationship we have and the works and the connections that we share. And as you say, just in branding and influencer marketing from like, I guess like a social media sphere, but this social capital plays out in communities and places all the time, just in a day-to-day. Like, that's my man's.
It's a powerful and a dangerous thing. People ask me to promote stuff all the time, and they're like, I haven't used it, right?
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me is that I know that when I say stuff, people take it seriously. Like, people believe me when I talk. Whether that is earned or not earned, right? I'm taking all of that stuff off the table. It just is what it is. When I say things, people believe me. So if I am promoting a thing that I don't believe, right? I mean, that is illegal, right? Like, it is like, if you are an influencer, right? And I'm not even an influencer. Like, I have friends with millions of followers. They're influencers. But you look at Kim Kardashian, when she promoted a thing that she didn't disclose was an ad, she got fined $1 million. It is illegal to betray the public trust. And so even at the smaller level that I'm at, I do feel an obligation. I had a person go off on me one time. I think I shared an article years ago that I didn't like read all the way through. And a guy hit me. He said, "Hey man, listen, people trust you. You gotta know what you're talking about." And to this day, I don't share a meme. I don't share an article. I don't share a post unless I Google it first. And I have caught many out of context, misinterpreted things that were just snippets. Like I can't do it. And that is in real life. If I'm gonna connect you to my mans, I need to be able to vouch for you. Too many times have I connected somebody to a thing, to a job or something like that, and they fumble that bag. That's not on them. That's on me. Somebody, once again, they shortcutted the trust. They said, listen, I don't have time to find out, but if you trust them, then we trust them because I trust you.
Yeah.
You can fumble that bag. It take a long time to build social capital. It takes a day to fuck it up.
Yeah. And furthermore, I like that you're sharing that, because sometimes it's aligned back to like the trust and like what Yusef Shakur says. It's like we need to align on values too. So like sometimes it's like, okay, and I tell people this, it's like just out of my love for you, I'm gonna be there. But I don't necessarily know all the stuff that this is.
Yeah.
I'm not immersed in it, but I can show up as Kari Frazier. Right. But I can't necessarily put Detroit is different behind this because I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it aligns with. I know you want me to help with that, and I may, but I got to know more. And if you're not willing to give me more, then I don't know what I'm saying, because, you know what I'm saying, you may have a kids camp, and I'd say, hey, you can send your kids over here, and then, you know.
fall off of something, then somebody die.
Fall off of something. You don't have vegan options for, like with my people, if you don't have vegan options for food and you want me to invite people to the ribs cook-off, I'm probably not the best person, because the first thing that's going to happen the minute that they show up and there's no food for them, they'll be like, yo, I like this, but I can't eat nothing.
Listen,
and I'm getting that vegan. I'm getting that text message immediately.
My girlfriend is vegan. I asked that question immediately because she got to eat. I mean, 50% of a man's job, I feel like, is to feed his woman. Like, I feel like that's like the whole job. Like, you got to feed, like, they be hungry. Yeah. And so, like, and my girlfriend, like every woman I've ever met, is very unpleasant when she's hungry. And so my job is to make sure that she is comfortable and fed and happy in a circle. I consider myself a bubble of comfort for my woman. That is what I find my job. And so, yes, she's vegan, fully vegan, only drink spring water. Like, if you go in there and it's tap water and steak, this ain't the party, dog.
And now it's looking like on the other end, it's like, damn, Eric only came here for 5 minutes. And it's like, well, you put me in a position where I can only be here for 5 minutes.
I got there. We walked around. I shook your hand. I introduced you to her. And now I got to slide because now we got to eat.
You got to go to the place that does accommodate where we at. And with it, do you think, because in that same alignment of values, because even as Yusef, I haven't even really asked Yusef this, do you think we're just faster paced to even slow down, to even see where those values are and what the grand goal is for connecting and collaboration? Because that's also not a, like a relationship. I mean, it is a relationship when we collaborate, when I support what you do, when I lend my social capital to what you do. Like, how do we align around values? How does that look like to you?
I mean, you gotta have grown-up conversations with people, and you gotta be able to separate when the values no longer align. And I think that's the hardest part, is why you see people defending men who do horrible things. Well, that's my man's, and so blah, blah, blah. I was like, hold up. Just because it's your man's don't mean he's not doing horrible stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? But you gotta be able to stress test. I joke all the time that if you see me with a white person, they've been stress tested.
Hilarious.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
hilarious.
You don't see me with no white folks and they had no conversation about race and culture and identity and institutional racism. Me and all my white friends and Arab friends and goddamn all these other folks, we have conversations about race and resource allocation and historic context of how people have gotten here and what and where our values align. Because I'm not gonna be the black friend. I'm not going to be the one where you go out here say the N-word and then you go, well, Eric is my homie and he down with it. Hell no. I am never going to be the co-signer. And I say that about people who assault women, people who don't like gay folks. I have been a person who's been on the wrong side of the trans conversation. For sure. for sure, right? Because I'm a black person that grew up in the church, that grew up in the hood, right? That was not where we was at, in 1998. But now on this side, now I got to talk to people. It's not that I'm not friends at all with people whose values are not perfectly synced up with mine. I don't think that's real. Me and my girlfriend is very different values. Once again, she's vegan. I eat meat. She's Christian, goes to church a lot. I'm atheist, right? We don't have to have the same value. But we need to understand where they intersect and where they don't, and if those things are deal breakers.
Yeah.
Some things are deal breakers. You cannot have a discussion about whether or not I deserve to be seen as a full human, right? Me and a Klan member are not going to be friends, right? Because they don't believe I have equal value to them on the earth, right? But me and a Christian can be friends because even though we don't align on, afterlife or where our values and morals come from, that doesn't mean that this is a bad person or that it's stupid. I think atheists get into this bad where it's like, well, Christians are dumb. And they don't understand that this stuff is based on reality. Or you even see it on people. I joke and call people space witches, right? The astrology, earth sciences folks. And they're just like, well, why would they believe in the white man religion? Like, bro, all y'all sound wild to me. My question is this a good person? Are they doing things that align with the world that I want to live in? Or are they not doing that thing? If they are not doing that thing, disassociate. It's fine. Same way people in the world.
Man, so many just like tags of what you just said. Cause like it's definitely things, we're we don't agree with everything. We're not supposed to.
And we're not supposed to.
And that's that back to that monolith and being willing to have critical thinking. And then it's definitely been times you present some information to me and it's like, okay, I put it, like I always say, I go to the mental dojo and I'm like, okay, that gives me a variance. And now I add layers to where my thought process is. Sometimes I jump ship and I was like, okay, I was incorrect, because that's also human to recognize that you can grow, but also still have respect for the perspective that you had before. That's what I think also.
Like I mentioned before, the conversation around the trans identity and community was somewhere that I was not when I was younger. And not just younger. I mean, in my 20s and almost in my 30s, right? I just wasn't there. But I've grown. And I've said horribly insensitive things and lost friends over it, right? I was not born a good person. I was born a person, right? I work every day to be a better person.
Yeah.
But the Eric I am now, I will look back on in 10 years and see things I am not proud of that I am proud of now.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And so my job now, right, is to be open to grow. I have very smart friends. And those friends have kicked my ass. Many of my friends I've gotten from being in arguments and losing those arguments.
Yeah.
Not having all these people around me who have all agreed with my opinions. Most of my best friends are people who have been like, that sounds dumb, let me tell you why. Right? That's the circle that you need if you want to grow.
And I'm gonna say this also. Look. If you plan on getting in a debate with him, just because his skill sets with oration, like you'll see it. I mean, just like me a little bit. Like it's going to be an exercise, but it's also going to be like a style. But I think also that kind of can be another cultural assimilation too, because especially like looking at two black men passionately discussing something, and it's all love. But to some people, it may get uncomfortable. But it's like, nah, this is how we go at, no, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? Because like one of the tags I was going to even say to Christian, when you talked about the Klan member, just to the history of our nation. The Ku Klux Klan is like one of the oldest Christian organizations in America. So it's like we have to also be willing to say, and you're right, that doesn't mean every Christian I know I'm going up to like, you might as well be in the Klan either. That would be provocative and inciting and
intellectually
and not productive. You know what I'm saying? But if we really want to start unpacking the history of some of this nation and its ties to that, then that'll be a page in the book. You know what I'm saying?
People taking advantage of a philosophy is not an indictment of the philosophy.
Yes.
And I think that is a thing that is, it's something that people have to come to terms with. I often joke that the homeless shelters are usually Christian organizations. There's very few atheist organizations of helping the homeless, right?
Very true.
That's the Christians that do that work. Not that there are not atheist organizations that do these things or do not connect themselves to a religious organization. But oftentimes you do see that the leaders of those organizations are most often the religious, right? The people who feel that it's their divine duty to give back and help, right? And sometimes their divine duty to, destroy people, right? You look at the founders of Chick-fil-A who funded horrible gay conversion therapy camps, right? But at the same time, they've also given all their employees days off work, and they've done all this kind of stuff to help people and given people job opportunities and college opportunities and done all this really incredible work. They are not a singular identity.
No.
Right? They are shades of gray inside of
Everything.
people.
And with it, and then this is, I guess, the other
I mean,
thing.
I still don't eat Chick-fil-A because of that gay conversion therapy stuff, but I understand that there is more to those people than that thing.
Let me ask you this then. Like, in that, why do you think in human beings we're creatures of comfort? Why do you think it's so uncomfortable to be challenged? Where you want so many people to support everything you do line step?
I think there are levels to it, right? Usually when you're challenging somebody's ideas, you're not challenging their ideas. You're challenging the person who imparted that wisdom onto them. So if you're going to say to somebody that idea you have about your faith is wrong, or that idea about your male and female relationships is wrong, you're not saying that you're wrong. You're saying that your dad was wrong, your mom was wrong, your granddad was wrong, and people cannot deal with that. My granddad was perfect. So how could a thing he imparted up on me be wrong? Somebody's mother passed, right? My mom passed, my grandma passed. So you have a relationship, so they are held in like a glow, right? When an artist dies, they are suddenly deified, right? They've never done anything wrong. And so you're challenging deeply entrenched thought processes, but also you're challenging the sanctity and the sainthood of people that people value, right? They put on these pedestals. To knock somebody's mother or father, grandfather, auntie, uncle, mentor off a pedestal is too much, right? And people don't want to feel like they're wrong. It's why locker room talk was such a stroke. It was a stroke of genius, right? Because when Donald Trump was caught saying wild stuff, they were like, "See, I told you he was a bad guy." And he came back immediately and said, "Do you remember when you tacitly corroborated and confirmed and joined in on and allowed your father and uncle and brother and all these other folks to have that same conversation? You've got one of two options. I'm bad and your family is bad, or it's all fine." And everybody, especially on the right, said, "Well, my dad's not a bad guy, and he's made those jokes. So if Trump made those jokes, maybe he's not a bad guy," right? It was the collective understanding that I don't want to feel like a bad person. And it is a challenge to understand that even good people do bad things, and even bad people do good things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is complex. And going deeper than that, no matter how someone feels about themselves, is a person a collection of their thoughts or their actions? If a good person is put in a position to continually do bad things, are they a bad person now, or are they still a good person because they regret the bad things they've done? Flip side, if you have a person who is a sociopath and has horrible thoughts to harm people all the time, but manages it all the time and it consistently does good things, but their thoughts are dark and they want to do bad things, is that a bad person or a good person? This is the philosophical challenge that people have with, why don't people want to be challenged?
That's deep. That's we're getting into existentialism, and you definitely clearly see. And if existentialism is an arm of philosophy of like existence and how we define, and that's where the wisdom of my mom, rest in peace, Jan Frazier, would say like it becomes more arbitrary. Like the definitive world of left, right, black, white, right, wrong. It becomes such a more of a gray area as people get involved, because you are correct. As you said, I've definitely seen some people that, and I don't necessarily define any person as a bad person, but I've definitely seen some people that that lend themselves to so many bad acts,
Yeah.
but still in certain ways have, their draws of where integrity lies.
Yep. They have capacity for like all these really random acts of good. Like they do horrible, they kill people and stuff.
Yeah.
But they make sure old ladies get across the street.
The movie, and we always had this debate, me and my homies, because, we're of that era, born in 82. We love the movie Scarface. And I always have, like, it's a moment in the movie Scarface where Tony Montana is charged to murder like a dignitary that's talking against the drug trafficking from Colombia into America. And Tony kills, I guess, like the I guess in street vernacular, the Plug's hitman, because the Plug's hitman was ready to murder this man before he gave a speech before the UN with his whole family in the car. And in my mind, it's like we've just watched Tony Montana kill like his best friend.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We've watched him basically murder his boss and take his boss's wife. Like all of these acts within the criminal world. So it's like if you in the streets, and this is really kind of how I grew up, which aligns my idea of morality too. It's like if you in the game, I can deal with you as such.
Right.
Meaning these rules of the street apply to people that sign up for street life.
You signed the street contract.
Yes.
And so now you deal with street justice.
Whereas if you didn't sign up for this, I have the integrity where I can't involve you in this.
But if you told Tony Montana with all of the horrible stuff he did that he was a bad person, he would kill you. Because he would be so taken aback. I've provided for my family. I've created opportunities for my friends. I've supported stuff. I've kept this neighborhood safe. I've done all these things. I'm not a bad person. That's why I try to think about the way we cast judgment even against the worst of us. Because the question is the real question to me is a person beyond redemption?
And that's where we really get into, like you and I both, like when people say like religiously, I definitely align. I believe in God. I align with Christian values because I was raised on Christian values, but it's funny.
Me too.
It's like my ideas of Christianity, as we've had these discussions, are like yours. It's like it's more through my grandmother. It's from Mary Lee Brown more so than pastor.
Right.
Or even me reading the Bible, because in reading the Bible, and this really bothers a lot of people I know, it's a way to interpret the Bible where you can do any act that you can think of.
For sure.
Depending upon how
there's a way to interpret it where you can do everything, and a way to interpret it where you can't do
nothing.
Anything.
Yeah, I was
going
to say
nothing.
Yes.
You can't go outside. You can't eat. You can't wear 2 different types of clothes. You can't shave your beard. You can't do nothing.
Yes. you can't have like it's deeper. It's like you can't have sex unless you're planning to have that woman have a child.
Exactly. Like forget the being married. You need to be in the process of making a person.
Yes. Like you can't do this for pleasure. It can't be like, oh, it's our anniversary, so let's get it in. No. It's ways to interpret it where like you're like every act is good and every act is bad. And I think that life it is so many variances, because depending upon the world, as you say, the street life contract, it's other things. It's the business life contract.
Right.
It's the college life contract. And then depending upon the type of business you're in, when you're running and gunning as an entrepreneur, you handle business differently than when you're an employee. So like so many things of these cultures, and we mesh, and hence going back to aligning in values can move us further to have stronger bonds and relationships where trust can be in existence.
Right.
And I guess comes another existentialism question. As you say, you want to build trust with people. How do you feel? First, let's go to you, and then I want your societal answer. Now it's like this is like a philosophy, just getting the game of how you feel. How do you feel most people? How do you build trust in yourself, for yourself? And then how do you feel society can in a healthy way build trust in themselves? Like how do people build trust in themselves and continue to develop it?
You know, I try to be consistent and intentional in the way that I engage with people. Right? I I I assume the best of most people, unless I get what I call the heebie-jeebies. If I feel like you are a person that's on some bull, I'm straight on you, right? We don't have to do the dance. We don't have to figure it out. I'm good. When you start, and then deeper in a relationship, if you start proving to me that you can't be trusted, I'm good. Like I don't need people to like me, right? I don't need that validation. But what I do need people to do is know what I would and would not do. If you heard that Eric was downtown wearing a t-shirt with some hoop shorts on, drinking a 40, slapping girls on the ass, you would be like, no, he wasn't.
I would say something I would, even if I saw the video, another movie thing. I love the scene in Donnie Brasco where they show Donnie Brasco is about this FBI agent that infiltrates a wing of the New York Mafia.
Right.
And they even had pictures where they showed them the picture of Donnie with the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And then they was like, we don't believe that. If I saw a video of it in this AI world, shout out to Tawana Honeycomb. I know she loved me saying this. I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, I don't believe it. And then if I saw it, I'd be like, okay, I got to pull Eric.
Then you say, what's wrong with Eric?
What is going on? Because something has hit a trigger where this ain't
regular.
Eric function.
And that is the only world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where people know what I'm about. That to me is the most important. Trust to me is about like a mutual understanding. What would I do given a circumstance? That to me is how you know you can trust somebody. If somebody says to me, this person that you know deeply did this thing, positive or negative, I should be able to have a reasonable understanding of if that is true or not. Right? Like, straight. Oh, yeah, my Kari saw a senior citizen having trouble getting across the road, stopped the car, got in the car, took her across the street, and let her out where she was going. I would believe that in a heartbeat.
Yep.
It may not even be true.
True.
But I would believe it was true. I wouldn't have to question if you would do that. Now, that to me is that relationship. That's why I have so many people I consider friends. People are like, Eric, you can't consider everybody your friend. Some people are associates, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I don't need all people to fill all roles for me. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to be at your bar mitzvah and your wedding and all that kind of stuff to consider you my friend, as long as you are the person that I know you are in the context of that engagement. I know that when I run into you, if I run into one of my best friends last night, I only see him like once a year now. I met him in the 3rd grade. But when I ran into him downtown, it's all love. It's all hugs. He picked me up off the ground, right? Spun me around in a circle like a little kid. You know what I'm saying? We went there, we sitting, we talked about 20, 30 minutes, and we out. He met my girlfriend. Dope. That man called me on my birthday every year. He pop up on me every once in a while. Cool, right? I don't talk to this man every day.
Yeah.
But I love him. You know what I'm saying? That I have a reasonable understanding of what he would do in any given scenario.
Yeah, and then knowing because the other side, as people know, I'm gonna challenge systems because I feel that Detroit is a black city. So
For sure.
the same thing of if you heard, hey, that one crazy guy over at Detroit is different, walked up to this white guy, said you don't deserve that contract and that need to go to black people in reparations.
Probably
you'd
did
be
it.
Like, yeah, Kari probably would.
He probably said that on the podcast.
Now, in reality, as much as I'm pushing for that, some of the things I'm pushing is in that same space of independent thought, free thinking. I'm pushing, I'm pushing, like, you may hear that from somebody, and then that person be like, he crazy as hell. I'd never go on his podcast. And you'd be like, no, if you go on his podcast, he'll give you the brevity to give, and then you'll have more of a space. But at certain times, that in my mind, how I'm presenting, as you say, the Kari that I am, is sometimes I need to press, because as much as the pressing of people, I feel like taking resources from my city in a black city and not pouring back into the black city. as much as I'm pressing institutions and people, it's more so for the people in my hood to see that.
Right. You're not going to just
for the
do
people
whatever
I
you want.
know. Yes.
You're not just going to live how you want to live without question.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to, as you said, like your stress test for white folks. Sometimes the stress test is, and I'll let people know. It's like, I stress tested you, but that don't mean that the minute we get in this room with Eric, he not about to press you, and I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna just see how you respond.
You gonna
and
get
then
pressed.
as they walk away, they gonna be like, man, I was like, yeah, a lot of what he said I agree with, but we can still do business, but at the same time, you will get pressed.
I think all privilege deserves a stress test. I think men deserve to be stress tested against how they value women and women's spaces. I think straight people, cisgender people need to be stress tested around their allyship. If you're going to claim allyship, you require a stress test, right? If you are going to be, and on the flip side, if you were like a white guy in rural Oklahoma and 99.8% of your friends are straight white people who do white stuff and farm and do this kind of stuff, I do not expect you to understand my struggle. Because why would you?
No.
You know what I'm saying? It is all of it is all of these things all at once. But if you are going to then come into a black city, and then impact black lives, and then use me as a shield of blackness, you got to be stress tested.
Yeah.
So all of those things. But once again, what am I reasonably expecting someone to do in a given context? That is how I feel about trust. On both sides, I expect certain people to do the wrong thing every time. I see certain people who I know is going to go into a boardroom. They're going to say to me all the stuff they're going to do, and they're going to go in that boardroom and going to fold up like aluminum foil.
That's hilarious.
They're going to crumple right up around a chicken sandwich and go back in the fridge. God bless them. But I know what they're going to do.
Now, and you've been in these spaces, and I've been in these spaces, and I'm definitely not Warren Buffett or Elon Musk or anything, but I've sat in some spaces where money is being talked about, time is being talked about, resources, a lot of things with other black folks, because culturally, even that landscape, and this is usually one of the biggest arguments that Kari Frazier makes, the landscape of all of this stuff. We're meeting in the Renaissance Center, like you say, in these big glass windows. You got to go through like 4 security guards before you meet.
Yeah.
That alone disorients a lot of us from going in there saying, this is what I need and this is when we need it. And then, it'll be a slick, usually slick, sometimes attractive, like team of attorneys. And they'll lay out, this is why it's good and this is how it'll work.
They handing you water and stuff.
Yeah. Like good cookies. Like, and I'm not talking about like.
Great cookies.
Yeah. Like amazing. Like
rich people have great warm ass cookies. I
don't
know
made
what
this shit.
Good cakes and bags. It's all from good cakes and bags.
And then, it's like April put something else in it.
I'll tell you.
You sitting there eating your Perrier water, and then they just gave you a 45-minute thing of PowerPoint slides and stuff, and
you're overwhelmed.
It's a spectacle. It's like a Disney show
it's
live.
40 of them and one of you.
And now you got to say, nah, that shit ain't good for our neighborhood.
And now you're an obstructionist. Now you don't care about development. Now you don't care about opportunities. Now you don't want black people to have jobs. And the jobs are trash anyway. But they last 3 months.
Yes, all of that. Like when you're that, it takes a different you have to know that more in that space of like the critical thought, or people may say the propensity of crazy, because the presentation they give is amazing, and then sometimes how it comes at you is different. So like it's the I love
how they send I love when they send their black emissary.
That's what I was gonna say, especially if that black person kind of knows you and followed you and sent you. Oh man, and then this really bothers me. I talked to Josh Adams, the comedian. It's like if we talking business and I don't really have a friendly relationship with you, don't start. You know what I'm saying? Cussing and using colloquialisms. You know what I'm saying? And it worked this, it worked that. It's like we ain't on that level. We're talking about this project. I take that as a form of disrespect, and you're trying to use familiarity and kind of my social capital and be like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, nah, we ain't on that. What's the business? What's the points? And then they throw the preacher at you. Then they throw the
definitely gonna throw a preacher at you.
Then they throw the attractive lawyer at you.
Oh,
They
yeah.
throw the attractive guy lawyer at you. They don't know what side of the game you're on. They throw somebody else from the community.
A community organizer at you.
That like, oh, I'm doing my project over here, you know, and then it's like, okay. And then for me, I still have to talk and engage with my community.
Right.
But that theater, it can get overwhelming. So like, you're right. A lot of times we'll go in, you know, we'll go in with this attitude, but staying focused through that theater, it's tough.
It's tough.
Because that theater, it's that good for
It's
a reason.
Good show. It's
Yeah.
a good ass show. At the end, you eating popcorn. You like,
Yeah, you like,
that's
damn.
what's up.
It's like, wow, you know what I'm saying? We gonna end up with every 3-year-old in my neighborhood gonna have a PhD by the time they 20.
It's amazing.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, all because U of M just decided that they didn't know these problems existed in Detroit. And no offense to U of M, you know, they're one of my people that I get money from. But at the same time, I still got to point this out. The reality is some of the challenges here are so ingrained in the ethos of the racism that exists here, of the segmentation that exists here. And I think we all play different roles in empowering and being a resource for our community. And then we get down to it. We're not a monolith inside our community in itself.
At all. Not the same folks, not the same need. I was just talking to somebody about this. The idea that black and Detroit are synonymous with poverty is wild. Because, like, my needs and the low-income person's needs are dramatically different. But we both have needs, right? Now, they may have more needs, or rather different needs, different structural needs. But our opportunity cost is different. The things you need to do to engage me is different. And what Detroit, what the leadership in this area and around it has done is have just decided that the only people who need help are the poor people, right? And so what happens when people stop being poor? Well, now you're all on your own. And so you go back to poor, right? Like there's no other way. You know, it's like when people make just a little bit above the poverty line, they lose their food stamps. Yeah, but that $600 gap was an important gap. That $300 gap was an important gap.
Yeah.
That takes you back down
To needing food stamps.
Now I need food stamps again.
And furthermore, even deciphering, like, yeah, you're right. Like, how do you resource things? And then one of my biggest debates always is like, just give them the money and let them. I hate to, an explicit here. Give the money and let them fuck it up. Because it's not like y'all using the money and not fucking it up either.
They fucking it up, bro. I have seen so many programs that show up, hit 20 people, and they be back in the streets. It's like, listen, why do you get to fuck up some money, but I can't fuck up some money?
Yeah.
Like, at least in this context, it go to my family.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, yeah. I mean, so it's like you that's one of the biggest, coming up with ways and programming, and you got to sign up for this and fill that out. And, like damn near you shame yourself and go through a process and the probational period and the judges, and you got to sit there and show how poor you are and you ain't got nothing, but you're trying to get a job and get your education. And it's like, I can't think because I'm hungry. Can you give me some goddamn food?
You got to do poverty theater.
You
gotta go in there with the worst outfit on, your wig to the side. Me and my poor destitute child in my single family household, and the father left, and we all on crack. But we just hope that the child has the opportunity to learn how to read by the time they're 36. It's like,
exactly.
Damn,
it's like, damn,
terrible.
It's like, man, get them like.
Can we
them
help
the good
this
cookies?
one?
Get them the good cookies. God damn it! You know what I'm saying? Like.
It's rough, man. It's rough.
All right, so as we get to a close, I do want to say I got my classic Detroit different questions. I know you're working on something because we were talking a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Reveal a little bit of what you're working on that you're ready to reveal.
So, what I'm working on with a group of people who are yet to be revealed is like a art and content studio style brand where we're going to be making media, we're going to be making art, we're going to be creating stuff that we think belongs in the world. I think is the best way to put it.
That's
right?
dope.
And not tied to marketing and all that kind of stuff, but just creating stuff that we think matters and feels good. And when I say feel good, I mean feels honest, right? Some of the stuff will be emotional, some of it will be sad, some of it will be joyful, but it will be in the context of what is an honest human engagement. And so I'm looking forward to how that goes, or if I starve to death, whatever.
In the journey,
Right.
So with it, like I say, as more rolls out, I definitely keep people abreast, because I know whatever it's going to be, it's going to definitely be artistically and culturally very cool. So I'm in the mix, interested. So classic Detroit is different questions. Your very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
I think my first car was my grandma's car. It was like a red Grand Dam, maybe
Okay.
'96.
Okay.
I remember I was gonna go get it fixed. It had busted down, and I was like, okay, well, it wasn't a Rolls Royce anyway, so I wasn't tripping. But then I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna fix this car. And the very night I decided that, somebody busted the back window out, and I haven't had a car since. I was like, you know what?
Where's the first place you went with the ride?
I do not remember. I do not. My like time and memory ain't worth a damn. Like cause I don't track a lot of that stuff. Somebody was just at my girlfriend. She asked me like, "What's my favorite childhood memory?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't think about the past in that context.
Okay.
I think about like the global past, right? Like, how did black people end up in a situation where they lack resources? But like for me, like I couldn't tell. And which is funny because my granddad had like an encyclopedic understanding of his life. He could tell you what day it was, what time it was, what somebody was wearing.
Wow.
He could tell you where it happened, when it happened, why it happened, what the exact quote that the person said. It was really incredible.
That's deep.
It was nuts. We were like, what the heck? Like, I was like, he might be making this stuff up. Like, he could be making this stuff up.
That's another beauty in storytelling. Details,
Detail.
descriptions actually help anchor people.
Yep.
But
I ain't got
remember that next time you tell a story for whoever's watching.
Yeah, just make it up. It's fine. Just lie.
Even if it is, it makes it seem more sincere. It's like, came in with a red coat and a blue hat. I remember, you know what I'm saying? Like it triggers things in our mind. Like all of this stuff, when I talk about this social engineering, and I'm not trying to scare people into like the whole neuro-linguistic programming is making you a certain way, but social engineering is something that's studied. It's in the marketing, it's in the communication, it's like the end receiver and what triggers people to respond to things. It's a science. That's why most restaurants have some of the same color schemes.
Yep.
Traditionally. Nowadays, we got a lot of new things and creativity because social media has changed the game, but still, traditionally, certain colors trigger certain orientations.
Yep.
You know. You're the DJ at the fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson, I guess now we call that Spirit Park, but
Spirit Plaza.
Spirit Plaza, there we go. You're the DJ. You get to play 3 songs. The fireworks just ended. What songs you playing?
Man, I'm ratchet, bro. I have like a weird thing. Like I'm playing like "Moonwalking" by Icewear Vezzo. That's like my favorite Detroit song.
Okay.
But then like I'd have to go like look at my Spotify. Like my Spotify has like all this. Like I save all the songs that I've fallen in love with. Because John Legend and I think it was Layla Hathaway have a cover of like "Angel," which is really beautiful.
I never even heard that. I'm gonna check it just from you saying it.
It bags.
That sounds like a
And then
great combination.
"I Want You" by Marvin Gaye is my favorite.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite songs.
Okay, you're gonna have the people leaving in that mood.
Yeah, that's my joint. So those are songs that I love. I just feel like that song, and I feel like that song has such a soft, gentle roll off. Like that, if you want people to stop fighting and stop being hype, that "I Want You" by Marvin Gaye is so like, it's just so chill. Like he performed it chill. I think the video of him performing it, he's like laying on a couch, just singing into the microphone. It's like this is the vibes.
Yeah, it's that record, and even the story of that the making of that song.
Yeah, man.
Like it was a lot more so going on. Shout out to Butch, Clay McMurray, and all of the Motown guys that shared some of the makings and all these records. But Marvin himself, his story, especially by the time that record was released, was, that's after Hear My Dear. Like you get
that whole record, right?
a freedom in him.
It's something special.
Yeah.
That's not something special. Yes, guys, you just got "Moonwalking" by Icewear Vezzo and Marvin Gaye at the same.
That is very Detroit, I would say. That's very Mojo-ish of a playlist, but people gonna be rocking with it. Last question: you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
I made a controversial statement about renaming Woodward. earlier today. And I made a joke that if like they need to rename Woodward after Dan Gilbert because that man poured so much money into a thing that ain't make no sense. You
That's
know,
hilarious.
it's. I think Dan Gilbert gets a really bad rap, and I mean some of it is definitely deserved, right? The money from the mortgage, crisis is from a fairly nefarious place, but if you're going to talk about the revitalization of the city in any context, it's Gilbert. The Illiches have had all the money Gilbert's had for much longer. The Manugians, all these kind of, the Manugians, but also, what's my man who owned the bridge? Maroons, all these, I mean, they're billionaires here. But for a guy to pour in several $billions into the infrastructure and then leave the lights on and do all this kind of stuff to make the city vibrant and do all this kind of stuff, I hear people say, why didn't Dan Gilbert, why didn't he invest in the neighborhoods and all this kind of stuff? Bro, that's not his job. He's not the government. Like, everything the dude is doing is just because he felt like doing it, which is kind of wild when you think about it. I think people have forgotten that man is not the government. Like, he's not the infrastructure. He just kind of altruistically poured into a thing that he thought could be cool, right? Like, if you're going to name Woodward after somebody, it's Gilbert. He's the only reason why Woodward kind of slaps right now, right? Like, and it don't slap that hard if you want to keep it funky. We have a whole conversation about the number of empty storefronts and the lack of access and all that kind of stuff. And I think there probably would be more access if he was still as active as he was. Obviously, after the stroke, he lost a little bit of capacity to be as engaged as he was. But the dude did a lot. And that's like the super controversial. I say as a person who I ain't never made a dollar off Gilbert and them. His team still don't like me for that Why I Hate Detroit article. Them people do not invite me to stuff. They do not like me over there because I talk a lot. I'm very critical of the organization. So this is not a paid endorsement of the man because he ain't paid me a red cent. But I do think if you want to look at an individual person who's made an investment into a city, I don't know if there's ever been an individual who's invested into a city the way that he's invested into this city. Weird.
Just it's so many rebuttals to that. I definitely didn't expect that, but like I say, this is the Eric. He's going to give a perspective where I'm sure, like so many,
some people
all the black
so
nationalists, I know they
be so angry.
They throwing whatever they drinking at their computer screen or their cell phone screen right now. I think
people should. I just want people to ask themselves, wouldn't they get mad at Gilbert about the way he invests? To remember that he's not the government, right?
I think this is where you get that classic Kari critique, and I remember that article, and I shared the hell out of that article a couple of times. The challenge becomes this, and it's really kind of similar to our mayor. It's not a Duggan or Gilbert thing as much as it's the ways that the access for opportunity opened up so much more abundantly for these white men in a predominantly black city, which is not a critique of them.
For sure.
It's a critique of the system.
They are receiving the opportunity based upon
it's like
whiteness.
If
for sure.
It would be like,
for sure.
It's
like being a man, right?
Yes.
It's not that I want to get more job opportunities because, obviously I want to get more job opportunities, and I didn't make myself a man, but I do get more access than women.
Yes, and I will exploit, the opportunities for it. So,
but are you kicking the door open for people to come behind you?
And that's where you have a bigger question, but like really just the blanketed first critique is always that they're being awarded opportunities that I don't feel that they should have been awarded in that same way. Now, with that being said, there are definitely this goes back to being a critical thinker. So I know certain people are going to have an issue with me saying this. Are there certain things where clearly I believe that the commitment and seeing a bigger vision and being more of a creative than the Illich family, just due to some of Dan Gilbert's history and everything, approached it completely different than, I mean, you mentioned the Fisher family, the Manugian, the Fisher family, the Maroon family,
Maroon family.
Bill Davison,
It's a bunch of
Yes.
billionaires,
Yeah,
and ain't nobody did.
same thing with the guy up in Pontiac right now with UWV. Like,
Yeah,
it's
UWM.
like I forget the guy's name, but like since he's taken the helm of control since his father, like he's functioning differently.
Mm-hmm.
So animating it in a different way definitely changes things. In the same work of Gilbert in Cleveland, and even the work that Gilbert's doing in Toledo, it's a different reality he's looking to create along the lines of the only thing we've seen close to that was Henry Ford, which is another provocative figure
Exactly.
that
Bad
you have
guy.
to look at. But as much as you say, bad people can do good things or good people can do bad things.
I have a lot of criticisms about the way Gilbert organizations have invested, the way they have blocked certain types of people from being in their storefronts, the way they have made it cost prohibitive to live in that place or to open businesses in the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is real.
Yeah.
Super duper real.
But when you look at the reality of some of the things that do exist, the influence, definitely, if we look at the past 20 years from a downtown perspective, that name will come up. I think from a community and other things, this is the first time I've ever heard that. And like I said, I'd have known you would have came with something different. But that's where, like, I think we must know how to take in the information, look at the whole scope, because like we say, they're exploiting opportunities that were given to them because of how society categorizes things and socially stigmatizes others.
I mean,
it's not necessarily their fault. It's the system's fault. And it's certain actors within the system, and I'm going to even be bold enough to say this, it's even black people itself that like the way things are they perceive, yes, they're benefactors of the way things are functioning. And in some ways, some of those black people, because of the relationships I have with them, they're in more support of these systems than anybody else. You know what I'm saying?
I say all the time with black folks like these who need white people, because some of them is doing the dirty work. I mean,
it's the cops criminals debates. Cops need criminals, because if there weren't criminals, you don't need cops. So when I say that, it usually bothers the hell out of most police officers, but police officers gonna always tell you that there's more crime going on, because it's basically a way of saying,
in the same way, a lot of nonprofits always go say that there's more illiteracy going on. They make the story out to be worse so they can get more funding to keep the jobs.
And this is one of my illiteracy debates. I say, boy, all of these illiterate Detroiters sure did figure out how to fill out the PPP loan application.
Sure did.
Because it was an incentive in reading that. So, and I know that somebody that fights illiteracy is ready to type and say like, da, 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 and I'm like, no. But what I'm trying to say is, if you tie it to something that we're incentivized by, this gets back into marketing, and remember, I'm more from a sales mind, then you get a different response from people. Usually, the offerings to the community are things that the community's not incentivized by, hence the whole, like what Eric was saying in the beginning. You need to understand the community, where you're going. Even if you lived here your whole life, if you don't really know the layout of it, you don't know the stakeholders, you don't know the motivations, you don't understand that, communities like mine have gone from complete ownership to now we're basically like 2/3 transient. These people are renting over here now.
Mm-hmm.
Renting at home. Some of them are renting at homes that were owned by their family, but now it's transitioned to someone else owning the home, and now they're paying rent in a house that their grandfather owned.
Yikes.
So like, you got to understand the layouts of this. And these people are such in survival mode. They moving from place to 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 place. So doing the community meeting on Monday at 6:00, and you're going to give them some pizzas because Little Caesars donated it. And it's like, where are these people at? And these people is at their third job.
It's one of the reasons why when I have these conversations with people about what is the person's job, right? What is Dan Gilbert's job? What is his obligation to the neighborhoods, right? And that kind of stuff, because the dude ain't live here. I mean, he might have was born here 60 years ago, right? But when you really think about that, I think this is the biggest problem that I tend to have with the way that we critique systems. We seem to always pick the wrong bad guy. We pick the most public bad guy.
Yeah.
right? Like, you're giving some of these people too much credit. To blame Gilbert and Duggan and these individual white guys for what has happened to Detroit over 60 or 70 years and has been done by a confluence of systemic racism and extraction that's happened over so long and maybe accelerated by a certain image or a certain person, you're aiming at the wrong guy. And it's the reason why we continue to lose. Because if you show up to a community meeting and say, well, the real problem is I don't have a curb because you need a curb today, or my roof is busted, or my real problem is that somebody had an affair, or all this other stuff, you're missing the forest for the trees, right? If you're going to argue that we don't want a community ordinance to give out X number of dollars or whatever, we don't want to give the taxes for that thing, you're never going to win that fight, right? You're never going to win the don't have developers in the city, don't have development fight. But the fight you might win is if you going to give them $40 million, I'm going to need 5 for the schools. You might win that fight because it's hard for them to argue that the schools don't need help.
And this is where the communication...
Put them in a situation where now they're the person that's taking. When we say no, we're the person that's stopping progress and development and jobs. But if you say, listen, we love progress and development and jobs. We also love the schools having funding, and we also love that 51%, 60% of these people need to be Detroiters, and we need to know that 30% of any additional gross, because this is all taxpayer dollars, needs to go to training programs, and we need to see a public website that shows those people going through it, and we need the liaisons to come from the neighborhoods that
be
those
us,
people are done.
know the culture.
Cool. You might win that fight. Different fight. It's a different boogeyman.
And I agree with that. And shout out to Russ Balan and so many of the others, the Traders for Tax Justice. You know, I'm supportive of that. But and we can close on this. But that's where like socializing financial capital and social capital, especially when we get into like these tax abatements, because that's the thing really that we get into. And then we get these tax, like just so many things happening with those tax dollars in the city. But then it's like when social capital is so weird, just the makeup of this, because I'm drafting the contract. Any good lawyer is going to write the contract in
favorable terms.
In favor of whoever pay them. You know what I'm saying? So, but social capital isn't one of those things that can drip. It's not like capital. It's not like, okay, I'm going to lend. That's like, I can't call somebody.
There's no currency exchange.
Eric's my man's 90% today. Tomorrow I'll give him the 80% my man's deal in coverage, and then the next day give it 75%. We're gonna depreciate my social capital. That needs to be defined in our own community.
Yes.
We need to develop those systems because this is something more so functioning in our own community. So hence, we need to know this. And this kind of goes back to like the critique of Jay-Z and the NFL. Like I say, I'm like, well, the minute that Jay-Z sat in the room and sat down with the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, he gave already his social capital.
Yeah.
Because whether whatever said, the picture's taken and it shows.
And it says that Jay-Z agrees, we agree. So I try not to go into rooms with people like that.
And you understand where he's even coming from. Because yes, that's where
you are tacitly complicit based upon.
And he know and Eric knows it's like, okay, I can't pull my social capital back. You know what I'm saying? The minute that I take this picture with the person that wants to put a nuclear power plant, and they just, and somebody that called him, like I say, the black guy on the project that know Eric, and it's like, hey, I got somebody I want you to meet. And it's like, all right, I ain't nowhere. I'm on the west side. We'll come to you. And then it's like, hey, then they start taking a picture, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to put a nuclear power plant, in your old neighborhood. And it's like, hey, give me my picture back.
No, you can't do that. Picture already up. They gonna name the park after your ass just to make sure they know it's you.
The Eric Thomas.
Eric Thomas Nuclear Park. Come play in the mud.
Yeah, that ERD trade is different, saying like, yo, that shit was some bullshit. But what I'm saying is like, as this balance in this theater plays out, we need to know that it's being a stakeholder in the stake we have as community. It's just different than where a corporation is looking at, where a business developer is looking at, where the contractors are looking at. And in understanding this sphere, we need to just be clear about what, as you say, what we want and not get caught up in that theater. You've given a lot of game on this. Not get caught up in the theater. Be clear about what we want. Be clear about what's fair. Until then, this America.
Aim properly. Aim properly is what I always say. Find the right villain, right? Sometimes the villain's not Trump. Sometimes the villain is Mitch McConnell, right? Sometimes it's the person to the left or right of the person that you need to expose as the villain.
I would say oftentimes it's the person you don't even see.
Almost always.
It's the person you don't see, you don't know. You say like, what? How? Like I took, and I'll close on this one for real. It took me so much research to find the family that bought Herman Kiefer, because I still consider that kind of in my footprint.
Mm-hmm.
You almost can't even find that's that internet wipe clean type development, because that's how a lot of this stuff happens and goes down. It'll be stuff that pops up and you don't even know them. The people that want their names out they have more of an ego. They're like the Trumps. They're the Gilberts, the
Sacklers.
Yeah, they're the people that want to be known. But you know how many things happen in this nation that you don't even know the family is connected to this LLC, to that LLC, this S Corp, that incorporation, these families that share, and you be like, who is this?
Who owns this?
You almost have to be Aaron Brockovich just to figure out who owns this, why do they own this, and what do they plan on doing?
Yep.
In those types of designs, like when you really find out how much of that property Matty Maroon ended up accumulating in that area of Southwest Detroit, near that bridge.
Bam.
Massive.
That's what he was doing instead of redevelopment downtown.
Massive. And then you're like, for real? Slowly but surely from different holdings, different companies, different realtors, and different designs. And then this folds into that. And I'm not even necessarily, this ain't a support or a hate for him either. I'm just saying that the design of this stuff, it just looks different as it happens functionally in person.
Yep.
And as it hits us personally in person, I hope that people do have someone like you to reach out to possibly get some game about how to prepare themselves to do exactly what you said. Take aim at the right target.
Amen.
There we go. Peace be.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today